how do you raise the funds? Share markets are down, so there is a equity raising. There may be some points. Uh,
Let me
there
explain
is
this
indication
to
of higher inflation. On the debt part, there is also two couple of things. Like one is that inflation may go up. If the inflation goes up, then interest rate goes up. Then your whole calculation, the cost goes up, goes different way. Number one. Number two, if you are importing machines, your import cost goes up. Okay,
right.
because your rupee has depreciated. If you want to raise foreign currency debt, your hedging cost goes up because it's a very volatile market. So given all, you need to rework. Number two, even on the product side, these were the changes in the economy, the factors of economy, and like the transport cost, input cost, all these changes, logistic cost. These changes needs to be looked into. So I am sure there will be these companies who are planning for capex. They will have to rework on that. So it may not be as smooth as as usual. They will go ahead with that.
Hi, welcome to Podcast with Pratim. I have with me Mr. Subhendu Moitra, my good friend and investment banker, founder director of POAS Advisors. We will discuss about a pure business topic which is very close to the economy and economic health. As you are aware, India was awaiting for nearly a decade after the Manmohan Singh government when the economy practically came to a collapse. I hope no one will disagree to that. The banking system collapsed or had huge NPAs, so they stopped lending money. Industries had huge overcapacity. There was serious problems. The power sector, everyone knows the kind of trouble that they have left behind. A lot of issues were there. So that affected very important, what we technically call capex, or the private sector investment in capacity creation, or to put it in very layman's terms, setting up new factories, which may be expansion of the present factory. Any expansion indicates job creation and growth. Now, we could grow without that for nearly a decade. We what we say is investment-led growth. So the government invested heavily in infrastructure creation, and that spiraled the growth. From there, after COVID, we redesigned and we are going into specific industries like semiconductor. You know that yesterday a second semiconductor plant was inaugurated, and we are into everywhere in that value chain, from telecom instruments to wafers, everything. So India is going to be very self-reliant on that particular segment, and it is contributing to our export earning. That said, so yesterday, uh, Business Standard carried a story. Now, the reference is just purely for people to give some credit, that the private sector capital expenditure, which was coming up for last 1 or 2 quarters, will sustain. We had, as in December quarter, we had after 11 years the highest capex. So which means that we turned around the situation. The so much of efforts have finally been paying off. Now that said, there is now an war. So the issue is whether the story said that the capex will continue. It is unaffected for the moment by the war. That takes us to this discussion. Shubhendu, what is your opinion? Do you think that, well, I understand the plants which already started capacity creation, I mean, which had start already into the project of capacity expansion. So they are not going to stop naturally. But what about the rest? What is your idea? Over to you.
Uh, I have also seen this news yesterday, and it looks very encouraging. And there was a reasons why that, as you said, last after a long time, our capitalization was beyond 75%, which was the right time for new investment. So it was happening, was supposed to happen.
Yes, that we discussed in the previous
Yeah,
episode
a
with you.
previous discussion we discussed, and also with the lower interest rate and those sort of things. There was a very nice Goldilocks situation we discussed earlier podcast. Now, see, this war has created some issues on that. Now, whatever is already started or they fundraised and they're investing, that's okay. Whatever is in plan, as a advisor, we always will ask some everybody, and every I think those companies will also do that. They will have to rework this whole projects or whole plans for various reasons. First reason is that how do you raise the funds? Share markets are down, so there is a equity raising. There may be some points. Uh, there is a
Let me
the
explain this
indication
to
of higher inflation. So
let me
interest rate
explain
may
this to the for the benefit of
yeah,
common people. Assume I'm going to I have a plan to raise say 1,000 crores. So if the share market is low, then I have to divest more shares into the market to raise the same amount. Or by
yes.
by divesting, offering the same number of shares to the public, I'll raise lesser amount. Over to you.
Yeah, that's also, and secondly, because of the you know people are may not be that much positive because they might have lost, some of them lost money, so that, I think, it becomes difficult raising equity. So there's two parts: raising equity, raising debt. On the debt part, there is also two couple of things. Like, one is that inflation may go up. If the inflation goes up, then interest rate goes up, then your whole calculation, the cost goes up, goes different way. Number one. Number two, if you are importing machines, your import cost goes up, okay,
Right.
because your rupee has depreciated. If you want to raise foreign currency debt, your hedging cost goes up because it's a very volatile market. So, given all, you need to rework and go back to the drawing board. That's what I'm saying. Number one. Number two, even on the product side, these were the changes in the economy, the factors of economy, and like the transport cost, input cost, all these changes, logistic cost. These changes needs to be looked into. So I am sure there will be these companies who are planning for capex. They will have to rework on that. So it may not be as smooth as I mean, as usual. They will go ahead with that. They have to rework on that, and some may have to do a different kind of calculation, different kind of sensitivity test to look into that. Even in the given scenario, it makes sense to put the project right now, or they have to wait for some time. I'll give you one more example also. I mean, overall, there's a caution. I can give you one more example. In between, Reserve Bank of India was planning that wherever the acquisition, so one we talk about, these are organic, expansion of the company, where you put up a project or set up a new project, expand. Another is inorganic, like when you buy a company, buy another company. So far, in India, this acquisition, whenever you're buying shares of another company, it was not allowed to be funded by debt from a Indian bank. It was not allowed. Though international bank are allowed to do it. Internationally, it is these are called acquisition funding or leverage buyout. When you buy the shares of another company, one company buys with a leverage. By leverage means taking more loan. That's called leverage buyout. So they used to always go to foreign banks to raise money for that leverage buyout. So recently, RBI was about to allow from today, 1st April. They have agreed, they created of course, they have made some checks and balances. They were allowed. But yesterday, it came in the newspaper, RBI has deferred it for 3 months. So everywhere there is a caution. So considering that, I believe that yes, things are still not so bad, and afterwards sometimes we may have more opportunity. I also agree for that. But because, for example, certain production facilities in Gulf has been affected, so some of our production facilities may have a better advantage as compared to earlier situation, because of the cost advantage or the logistic advantage. So we have to look into that part. For example, the aluminium, I think, which you discussed, aluminium, some of the smelters have been
We will,
attacked.
yeah, we will come to that. You said about you briefly touched upon, but I think for the benefit of viewers, we must just elaborate it a couple of more lines. Is that the supply chain? Suppose I thought of importing something from, say, Gulf and export the product through Gulf, like UAE and Saudi Arabia are our third and fourth largest trade partners. UAE in particular is an export hub. You export there, from there things go off to many places. So that supply chain needs to be reworked. That is
Yes.
what Subhendu has been telling. Subhendu, the second part where you started saying about opportunities, now that also takes me briefly to a question. When you say that that you have to rework, right?
Yes.
Now, rework may not always be negative, because you
Yes.
started saying about opportunities. So, so what about those? I mean, that you see an opportunity that is emerging, and you go and expand your capacity. That this is the moment, that so that you can tap the market at the right moment. Though I know that unfortunately it so happens that the financiers or the banks, they generally give you money at the peak of the chart, and by the time the project is completed, it comes down. That is a normal
You're
reality.
right. They are very risk averse. They're supposed to be. Actually, equity guys are supposed to taking more risk, and debt guys are always supposed to be risk averse, because their money, there's no upside. There is only a downside, or they have to recover money. So they're always very wants to do that way. But anyway, right or wrong, that's one part of it. But I believe that yes, there are a lot of opportunities. For example, I was just starting the earlier point. You see the aluminium smelter attack there in Dubai. So there may be more opportunities, but more production opportunities in our country. So far, those countries in Gulf, they have a very low power price. Power used to have very low power price. Plus, there are no taxes. So those are the advantage. They attracted a lot of industry. Now, of course, they will attract in future also. I'm not saying they'll not be able to do that. The point is, given that these projects takes time to develop, some of our own companies may benefit out of it. Number one. Number two, there are also maybe opportunity for us in creating some kind of export hub. If Dubai can be export hub, why in somewhere in our western coast, some other port city cannot be export hub with some picking up the rules? So that is, I think we need to look into this part of it. Third, what I say is that in addition to export infrastructure, see this when this war stops. Of course, we are 1 month into the war, so we have earlier also discussed. We initially thought it will take a very short period. It's not happening that way. So when the war stops, there will be a lot of redevelopment, because you have to also understand where the destructions are happening. Those are very rich places. So it's not that after destruction they will keep it like that. They'll be rebuilding, and in rebuilding, Indian companies, especially the construction companies, the EPC companies, they'll have a lot of opportunities. So that's another positive part of it. And also, some of our products like steel and all, they will have demand in that places because of the construction. So that's another point, I think, opportunity which I look once the war stops, of course, not immediately. So these companies who are in this business, I'm sure they are looking for the ways to uh, take those opportunities, or be able to get benefits out of those opportunities.
Right. Shubhendu, exports contribute barely 1 to 2% of our GDP,
Yeah.
GDP growth, if we look at. Now, that said, uh, this war has given us certain, I don't know why people have, I mean, I haven't seen this discussion. For example, we shifted from naphtha-based fertilizer to gas-based fertilizer.
Yeah.
Now, that also made us dependent on ammonia imports from the Gulf,
Right.
right? We have enough urea making capacity, but we are dependent on Gulf for ammonia. Now, my question is, we know that globally, post-COVID, the world was moving away from the concept of globalization. Everyone was creating some critical capacities in their country. I'm talking about
Yes.
the bigger, major countries. So, do you think that there should be, well, one naphtha based fertilizer facility that was pushed by Coal India and I think IOC is also a partner there.
Yeah, oil companies and coal companies, they're putting up certain, they were taking over those old Hindustan fertilizer units and rebuilding those.
That three plants that they invested
Mainly,
upon, right? It is the old, I mean, through the coal gas and etc. Something they were working upon. So, do you think? See, we have our refineries. We can generate naphtha,
yes.
and we can do that. So, do you think that there should now be a focus in these areas where we can build some critical capacity of our own? We are excessively dependent on the Gulf.
So I think wherever is our critical points, like one is that this fertilizer is linked to the agriculture and is a major area of our concern. So when it's all such cases, we need to now look inside and see how we can be self-sufficient. We cannot keep those things open because this world has become very unstable, especially last decade or so. And with this bilateral business coming into the picture, and overall, there is no rule for international
See, if you,
trade.
I don't know whether you have noticed, this is actually what happened to the world during COVID was when China went for long lockdowns,
Yeah,
the world suffered because China was the factory of the world,
right.
right? The same thing has happened today to us because we were so dependent on the Gulf. So when something has struck Gulf, we are affected.
Absolutely. Not only that, in that time, one positive part was there that at least a lot of activities were not there. I'm not saying agriculture and other. A lot of activities were curtailed down. Now, most of the thing activities are on, but at the same time, there is a supply constraint, which we are facing in a lot of sectors,
So
not only
effective demand is much higher.
much higher than that time. So like that time there was, if the oil was not there, there were not much of transporting except the critical parts and all. So basically what I'm saying that we need to relook into all the critical
Supply
areas,
chain, all the supply chain
all the
logistics.
supply chain areas. So wherever we are affected, like for example, and after the war we are building our own defense capacity. I'm just giving an example. Or we are thinking of having our own shipping. We don't have much of Indian shipping. We are thinking because these are all coming out of
Now
this.
we are investing. Now
Yeah,
we are investing
yeah,
into
because
carriers, into
so why
carriers.
India was originally the in this business, not historically. So in between, we left to others, which we are now taking back. Similarly, for agriculture also, the nano fertilizer or whatever, depending, making our own naphtha, using our own ways or means and all. So those are the things. Uh, you know, we need to look into it because we cannot depend. And secondly, we have to diversify this business of you find most of our whenever even our US tariff attack. I mean, we are suffering from US tariff. We found a lot of areas we are totally dependent on one market, particular sectors for the eases. But now that has we have learned that we have to diversify our market. Now we have to also learn that, especially wherever the critical points are there. I understand government has set up a couple of committees of senior bureaucrats on those issues. What should be the change in our course of action for taking care of such kind of
I hope
disruptions.
that I hope that sorry for my language, but I hope that they move their ass because once
I
the
think,
trouble is over, they will all will go to New York for holiday.
yeah. So, but I think that if this current, I mean, Prime Minister puts them in the job and reviews them, they have to do that. So, considering that, I believe they will come with they have to come with some solutions. It's not that everywhere you will have a solution. That there will be some
No, no, no,
problems.
no, no, no.
You are
You
supposed to
cannot
have
have.
like, like like you need oil. You need to import oil. I mean, you
There
have to
is
worry.
no escape from the fact that the Gulf produces 1/5 of
Yes,
global oil and gas resources. There is no escape from this fact. There is no
exactly,
escape from this fact that Gulf is very close to us. So that makes it economic
exactly. So
instead of importing something from Russia or
from
Canada.
yeah, or from the far off places. So basically, what I'm saying, it's not that everything the solution will come very positive for us, but at least we should know once this thing happens, what we should do immediately. We should
No,
create
I think
our
we should have wherever there are areas where you cannot, you don't have gas and you will not have gas.
gas. Oil
That
will
is
not. So you have to
that is a reality.
So yeah,
So,
exactly. You have to see exactly what to do with it. Whether you need to give nitrogen, whether you have to create more of your strategic reserve.
but the
So,
point is in that case, so but you can have 30-40% naphtha based fertilizer capacity,
yes, that is
so
what
that you are
exactly.
not as dependent on gas. So that we must, I think we must do. Interestingly, let's go now to a little more positive thing. So, uh, say for example, we have been, that's a great move that the government had taken, is ethanol blending,
Yes,
right?
20%.
Right. There had been a lot of negative reports, but I presume that they were largely pushed by the auto
Auto blends.
ecosystem
Uh,
because they have to do a lot of work.
mm.
But this 20% savings is damn good. And what it leaves us, see, ideally we can go up to 50%. Brazil goes up to 50% ethanol blending.
In fact, Brazil has stopped exporting sugar. You've seen,
Right.
na, they converted everything to the ethanol now with the oil problem, you know.
Right. So
Off late,
we have a lot of upside there.
yeah,
Well,
right.
now one positive factor is that I understand Bihar, Eastern UP, like places which are poor and are sugarcane growing areas. So they must be sugarcane, and ethanol is also coming from maize, right?
Yeah,
So I believe that they will make a lot of money, mint money
yes,
in this season.
exactly. Exactly.
So,
That's
so back to our discussions, we find aluminium is going to make money.
right.
Coal is selling at 30-40% premium in the open
Absolutely.
market.
Yeah, yeah.
A lot of replacement will take place between gas and coal. There are also industries like there are many industries we haven't discussed. Like, for example, ammonium, when you import ammonium nitrate, now from ammonium nitrate, there is a commercial use. One use is producing those gelatin sticks, which are used in stone quarries,
Yeah, blastings and all the things.
blastings. The other thing is ammonia is used for processing in plywoods. And if I'm not wrong, ammonia has use in food processing.
There is also plans of the green ammonia. Somebody is working on that. Uh, there is also, of course, that is too preliminary. There is a technology which is too preliminary, I'd say, that to be able to capture nitrogen from
Yeah.
environment. That may take long time. So they're thinking of that. I mean, people are working on that. So I mean, if those are all long shot. But I'm saying we have to think more into that innovation, R&D, diversification, all sort of things we have to look for.
So one uh, I should say spin-off is, you see, all you can do, it will come at a cost, right?
Yes, yes, of course.
So security, to put it in layman's terms, if you want to be more secure, you have to put some CCTVs, you have to put a security guard there, and it costs, right?
It's insurance. It's a insurance. You pay premium, right, for the insurance, like that.
Right.
You may
So
not
then,
require it, but it actually protects you when there's a problem.
right. So then, how can we be, after incurring these costs, how can we be cost effective?
See, once you have created that kind of ecosystem, the stability it brings to the market, that makes you more attractive to everyone, including the investors. So today, why the investors were dumping Indian share? Because they know we are vulnerable to the oil, we're vulnerable to the gas. So once they understand that even under that scenario, we are able to manage ourselves. I think this vulnerability less, so there'll be more investors will be interested in India because of the improvement in the stability factor. So that is one positive part of it. Secondly, stability helps government in planning in a proper way. Otherwise, as we say, a lot of plans may go awry because suddenly there is a huge disruption in the.
Yeah, we saw that some drone manufacturing plant that we had suffered because of the Iran problem.
Exactly, right. So this is what these are what I'm saying.
Right. So now we are at the end part of the discussion. There is no point in discussing the past, but let's go back to those UPA era when we saw the aluminium smelter project of Vedanta at Kandmahal had to wind up. Uh, Environment, quote unquote, became a sort of was ruling our lives, kind of, right? It was stopping coal mines. If you remember, coal projects, coal production was not moving because of environmental restrictions. Everything was stuck. Now, had that not happened that time, we would have reaped much higher benefits today. Our aluminum companies would have reaped much higher benefits today.
See, not only aluminum, if we are discussing those period, it was iron ore, it was aluminum, it was coal, all were affected. Suddenly, all our mines were closed. Of course, there was reason for that because there was discussions of corruption in those kind of areas. But as a nation, you have to understand that we cannot keep our resources in mind. And secondly, even if the environment, we have to do the balancing part of it, because these are like, if I have to ultimately import aluminum from outside or import copper from outside, because the copper also there was some issue in
Yeah,
south.
it's closed the factory in Tamil Nadu.
Yes. So that is not the right thing, because ultimately, as a country, I become poorer and I become dependent. I become dependent on some outside forces. Also, we need to look into that in those scenario whenever those problems are coming, whether there's any larger interest of foreign some powers or the companies
There
who
are
are trying
larger
to,
interests.
we
So,
are who are trying to stop us in doing that by brainwashing people or whatever I say, so that we stop doing that and they reap benefit out of it. So I think we have to look into it, because somebody is producing at the end of the day, right? If I am not producing, somebody is producing and selling it to me, so he
I
will
mean, the
make
same people who have been today blaming the government for why don't you have that capacity? Why don't you have that capacity? Only 10 years ago, they were jumping down on the streets demanding, closure for environment. I mean, so much of hue and cry to close down the Vedanta Kanmahal. It was a completely manufactured, I mean, ready project. Just
yeah,
the
yeah.
way they forced the Singur auto plant shifted out of Bengal, same thing happened over there.
So with the bauxite, Odisha has a huge amount of bauxite. So we could have reaped benefit out of that. We are still having units like Nalco and Vedanta Aluminum, but then we could have done more. I'm sure about that. So
So
these are
that's the
the things.
story, whether we could have done more, whether we can be more
Yes.
prosperous.
I think
Uh,
as a nation, we need to come to this thing that, okay, environment, it's very important for us, global warming environment. But at the end of the day, that should not make us vulnerable to the world,
why
especially in
why
such.
it should be why it should be so much of a issue to us if US can get out of all those uh,
Yeah, all
agreements, Kyoto
all green
protocols, and all
agreements are
these
out.
things.
They are out. They said we're not bothered. So anyway, I don't think that's also very right in the given the global warming kind of scenario. But at the same time, we need to get a very nice balance. So we should not stop things. We should see how we can do it better and how we can create
So
a.
do you expect, my precise question is, do you expect or do you suggest the government to come out with some, that there is a serious effort going on. Let me take the name. The US is the real culprit, US and Europe, which are doing this democracy degradation campaign. Okay. Uh, you see, they are disturbing Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bangladesh, and they cannot change regime here, so they are downgrading it, right? So all these things are happening. They are trying to fuel protests and etc. So do you think that the government should now go for a relaxation in all certain areas? Uh, it should get out of certain areas and take some harsh decisions on that.
Yeah, I think the government should make a very. They have made some policies. That policies should take care of such things. One-to-one situation. If you allow it to create, then we are going to have a problem. So once we make a very conscious policy that in such kind of scenario, when nations, assets need to be
Emergency.
used, we should be able to use it. We should not allow others to be like, if I have to use my coal just because somebody doesn't want us to use coal and use their oil, I should not always listen to him. I should listen to him to an extent, but not to see. I remember several times we were told that we never use your coal, uh, coal
There
assets,
was so much of an
and
anti-coal lobby.
anti-coal lobby. But see, look
That
at
is the
look at our
only energy
situation.
resource we have.
We have only, and it's a huge, where now if I stop using that and start using only oil, and so see, solar has its
And
limitation.
I am sure you have read, I shared it on social media. Uh, Japan increased use of coal.
Japan, Germany, the biggest people, these people tell us not to do that. So they have increased it because see, energy is
No,
very important.
Japan always batted for coal.
Yeah. No, Japan was not that taken up. See, Europe, especially
It's
Germany.
it's Europe, it's Germany, it's UK. These are
And
the
now Germany has
culprits.
started his coal-based power plant, last year, I think, when the Russian problem started.
Yes, yes, yes,
So
yes,
I
yes.
think, if they are preaching us, we should be also careful that what we are listening, what we are not.
So we,
And we
I
should
think
have
what you,
our own plans, not dependent on others, what they are saying.
so I think I mean, our joint recommendation to the government is that let it be strong enough to thwart all this nonsense
Yeah,
out
we
of the
should,
window.
for doing our self-sufficiency, we should look into all such factors and not get bogged down by what else somebody is saying from outside the border.
Right, right. We have not, जैसे in Hindi they say कि हम ठेका नहीं लिए हैं.
Right.
तो हम, if USA can just dump its responsibility overnight, so we also have no responsibility that way.
Right.
Okay.
I mean, we have responsibility to our people, so we should see that our environment gets protected. I agree with that part, but at the same time, we should not, just because somebody is saying that you don't do this, I should not stop doing that. I should have a
Yes,
look into that.
yes.
That
Our critical assets were purposely disrupted. Critical growth was purposely disrupted,
yes.
so that and some people in the government, they collided with them. Some people in the opposition joined hands with them, and this was a huge lobby. I'm very happy with the Modi government that they have sized up all the foreign funded NGOs.
Yeah, right now there's a lot of restrictions.
They are just out, and I am very happy with that. And this whole, you see, from Maoist to the environment, these all were linked. These all were linked. So thank you so much, Subhendu. I
Thank you.
hope that's great. Okay, bye.